ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
I am very eager to talk with Dr. Joe Galati because whether it's in the news or in the neighborhood chatter on my block or in the neighborhood chatter down the hallway, people are very concerned with health. Now, that in and of itself is not terribly new. But what is new is there's a whole discussion about these GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy, these diabetes drugs that are being used for weight loss. And we have a couple people here that use them and have been saying how great they are. Is this the game changer America has been waiting for in terms of turning the corner on obesity? At 30 minutes after the hour, this is The Other Side of Midnight. Here to help answer those questions and a whole lot more, Dr. Joe Galati, liver specialist, wellness expert, speaker, and author. Dr. Galati, it's great to talk to you again.
Oh, my goodness, Frank. Merry Christmas. It's always so great to be here with you. And I was sitting here almost laughing when you started bringing up Jesse Ventura and the Saturday Night Main Event. I was in medical school when that first kicked off, and I believe the first one was at the Nassau Coliseum.
That's right, and I think that's where it's going to be tomorrow as well.
Unreal, because I remember, I think I was doing a rotation through Brooklyn Hospital at the time, and a bunch of us were saying, hey, can we get tickets to go to the Nassau Coliseum, which was just sort of around the block from where I grew up in Wantagh. And I never ended up getting there, but it was always for those that lived back then, that was a very cool show on Saturday night.
No doubt about it. So they're going to do these 3 times a year. It's going to be very interesting. All right. Let's talk about what's going on when it comes to the liver and obesity and more. First, let's talk about the liver. I feel like over the last 5 or 6 years, there has been an explosion of people dealing with liver disease and being in need of liver transplants. In some instances, my friend Coach recently celebrated his 8-year anniversary of having a new liver. He's doing great. Is that my perception, or is there an uptick in liver problems?
Well, I think that for the most part, the liver is not a very sexy organ, and there's sort of a stigma associated with liver disease. People think that the only people that get liver disease are alcoholics or drug addicts that get hepatitis, and so it's not really talked about that much. But you're right. So really, I think what you're getting at is over the past 8-10 years, there have been a number of breakthroughs with drugs for hepatitis C, which really had been a problem for us for 20, 30 years. And now we can identify folks that have hepatitis C and cure them almost 100%. The other thing is really tied to obesity and fatty liver disease. And what a lot of people don't realize is that fatty liver disease, just from being, for the most part, obese and having diabetes, leading cause of chronic liver disease, cirrhosis, and liver cancer, and a leading cause to need a liver transplant. So you're right. There's a lot more liver disease in the news. There's new drugs. And I think, and our crusade, in a sense, in the 33 years that I've been doing this, we need to make a greater awareness to liver disease like you're doing here. So, and there's just hundreds of thousands of people with liver disease that are just sitting quiet.
Yeah. Why is there such a stigma about, say, the liver?
Well, I think it all comes down to the sort of the old story of the alcoholic. To this day, now alcohol only accounts for about 48 to 49% of all cirrhosis. The other 50% is fatty liver autoimmune diseases, viral hepatitis. But yet the rank and file person out there, if you ask them who gets cirrhosis, they're like, well, of course it's the alcoholics. And it's so silly, Frank, because it's to the point now where if we're with a patient and we disclose that based on a biopsy or based on testing, imaging, you have cirrhosis, and they've never drank at all, they are, first of all, a little put off, and that they say, you're accusing me of being an alcoholic? No, that's not what I'm saying. The other thing is they don't want to tell their family or friends or coworkers that they have cirrhosis because, what are they going to think of this guy? We didn't know that, Bob in accounting was a closet drinker. So it's all this that we have to unpackage, and it just makes it all the more tough.
If people are just tuning in, this is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. My guest is Dr. Joe Galati. If you want to learn more about him or check out some of his books, you can go to drjoegalati, Galati.com. That's drjoegalati.com. Dr. Galati, how big of a problem is obesity in the country today?
It's huge. It really is. I think if you look at those that are overweight and obese, it's probably over 75% of the population. And the sad part is that 20% of the kids, 2 to 19 years old, are obese. And where there is obesity, there's going to be diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, high cholesterol. So it's this cascade of serious medical problems. And what, RFK Jr., to sort of inject him into the conversation, so as Make America Healthy Again, he is really trying to focus on this chronic disease. And this is exactly what he's talking about. It's obesity and all of the downstream complications. But obesity leads to disability. It's very expensive, and it's really draining the healthcare system. The cost that is attributed to all this obesity is staggering, and it makes your head turn.
I want to ask you about RFK in just a minute. He's my guy. He's been a guest on the show. But talking about where America is in terms of the physical cost of chronic obesity and the financial cost of obesity, have these obesity drugs, the GLP-1s, these Ozempics, the Mounjaros, the Wegovy's, have they helped at all move the needle back in the right direction?
Well, they have, and I think this really is the tip of the iceberg. So, we talk about Ozempic and Wegovy. There are several others that are in the pipeline. They're looking at combining some of these medications with other drugs that are out there. And I think that it's going to have to be 5 years, 10 years before we could really look back to say, have these drugs made an impact? Now, the only problem, and I'm not here to defend them or sort of tear them down. We have to be careful that we are teaching people proper health habits, because what I'm seeing is people go on these GLP-1 agents, they do lose weight, and then for whatever reason, their insurance company stops payment, the pharmacy runs out, and there's a gap in getting these drugs. The 20, 30 pounds that they lost, they gain back in a matter of weeks. And because they're back to eating the same thing, they're sitting on the couch, they're not exercising, so they're back to their old ways. So I don't think we could drug ourselves out of this problem. We have to learn how to eat better, how to cook, stop our dependence on processed food and drive-thrus and things like that. But without a doubt, these drugs are, I would say, an integral part of all of us digging ourselves out of this problem.
There's been a big debate, and we've covered it on this show, about this Biden proposal to have Medicare and Medicaid cover these obesity drugs. What do you think?
Well, cost is a problem. That is driving a lot of people to go to compound pharmacies, get these drugs on markets other than your corner Walgreens. So I think that may cut that out, but the price tag here is going to be humongous. That would be my only issue. The cost is going to be huge. Do we use these drugs for the most in need, the people that have heart disease? Because a lot of these drugs now, the GLP-1s, they're being touted, and I do believe it, that for patients in heart failure, that it helps them as well. So do we sort of segregate these drugs for the sickest, the most advanced cases, rather than a lot of people that want to get on it for strictly a more cosmetic reason? Those, I think we have to try our best, and sometimes it's not always accepted, to work on their lifestyle and reserve these most expensive drugs for the most sick at this point, I would say.
No, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that people who have not tried these drugs but have considered them have worried about is the idea of side effects. What do we know about any of the possible side effects if you take these drugs?
Well, when you talk to the endocrinologists who have been using these drugs for a longer time, rather than everybody that's jumping on the bandwagon for the obesity, they were using these drugs for diabetes. They say there is not a huge risk, but there is a reality with thyroid cancer, some pancreatic issues. The other thing is with the weight loss, we're finding that people are losing a lot of lean body and muscle. They're losing muscle. And so they're becoming more weak in a sense from this muscle loss. So you have to sort of make sure you're getting enough protein in your diet to sort of counteract the muscle loss. So again, no free lunch here, no pun intended. But we have to always proceed with caution, I think. I don't think you could go into this to think it is the absolute panacea, but realize that there are risks with the drugs, there are risks not using the drugs. So you have to sort of balance that out for the individual person.
This episode is brought to you by Principles. Ray Dalio, legendary investor and New York Times best-selling author, wants to pass along his understanding of how countries go broke, because he believes the U.S. budget and debt situation needs to be addressed. To give you that knowledge, he has put the draft of his book, How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle, online for free. It's available now at economicprinciples.org.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, streaming now only on Netflix.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Lights, camera, innovation. Walt Disney Studios chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform the movie-making process. Together, we kept a remote production hub in Hawaii and sync with a team in California to bring Lilo and Stitch to theaters this summer. This is picture-perfect collaboration. This is Walt Disney Studios with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you alluded to, he is very unhappy with things like artificial dyes and a lot of the chemicals that are in food in our country, which are prohibited in places like Canada and the European Union. In fact, I was, in the last week or two, one of my neighbors was eating some sort of chip that has a color that is not naturally occurring in nature. And one of my other neighbors said to him, enjoy those now because RFK is about to ban them all. How are you feeling in terms of optimism or pessimism about RFK and where he's going to take the country with this Make America Healthy Again agenda? The RFK's critics are quick to point out that he's not a doctor like you are and has no formal medical training. By the way, a lot of those same people didn't mention that of Javier Becerra and other secretaries of HHS, but fine. How are you feeling about the prospects of RFK as HHS secretary?
Well, I'll tell you, we are in a bad state of affairs here. And if this is what it takes, a guy like RFK Jr. to come in and literally shake things up and make people get on their head because of all this, sign me up. I'm on that bandwagon because when you look at now, again, a whole other thing is this whole insurance company thing, which you could talk.
Oh, I'm going to ask you
about
that. Believe me.
Yeah, but I think if you look at obesity, childhood obesity, the amount of chronic disease, mental health, the amount of cancer, the amount of kidney disease, we are the greatest country in the world. We have the greatest medical minds, the greatest medical centers on earth. Let's put it this way. Nobody is flying to Hungary to get open heart surgery. They are flying to America to get all this stuff done. Cancer care, transplants. We have it all here. But yet the people are sick. If you look at life expectancy, chronic disease, disability, it's a mess. And so going along, kicking the can down the road ain't working. And so, we need, I don't care, RFK or anybody else, somebody that's going to get in there and articulate the problem and, old school, break a few heads. We've got to make a change. Now, do we need to throw out vaccinations? I don't know about that. But, with the food, the preservatives, the processed foods, the obesity, the fentanyl crisis, our mental health, I'm all for it. And if under the umbrella, I was reading the other day, he's probably potentially going to touch on about 15, 20 hot button topics. If he could just get on the top 5, we are going to make a major, major change here. So, again, the other professional bureaucrats haven't been able to do this. We bring him in. I'm all for it.
All right.
And we need it. We need it. We really do need it.
Clearly. Speaking of drugs, and maybe this goes to your point about the insurance companies, I have two friends, Diane and Bridget, that are traveling in Europe right now. They're listening because it's a much more convenient time to listen in Europe than when they're living in the United States. And one of them asked the question, why is Ozempic $1,000 a month in the United States, but $95 a month in Europe? And she sent me a health system tracker, which is comparing the price of Ozempic to Japan, Canada, Switzerland, Germany, the Netherlands. And sure enough, in the United States, it's 8 times what it is anywhere else. Why is that?
Well, you can look at it to say it's corporate profits. Now, it does cost hundreds of millions of dollars to develop a drug, but some of these drugs were already around. That the investment was made years ago, so they're not still recouping it. Is it simply just supply and demand? It's like, hell, everybody wants this. Let's jack up the price as high as we can that the market will bear. I don't know. This, you could pick any drug, any sort of brand name drug, and we have people, we're close to the border here in Houston. People are going to Mexico. They're getting it online. Up north, they're driving into Toronto to buy drugs. It's a shame. I think we need full disclosure as Americans why this is the way it is. Yes, people have to make money. They're stockholders, company executives, whatever the case. But again, you see this much and you start thinking gouging, that we are being gouged. And is it so expensive? And just, talking about this drug or any other drug, is it so expensive that it sort of precludes other people from getting a treatment that they need. That would really be bad, and I do think that's happening in some respects. But, other people will say, well, your health insurance will pay for it, but, your premiums are sky high. So it's sort of just a vicious cycle, and we need somebody, and if RK is the guy or Trump is the guy to do it, we have to hit the pause button and say, why is it costing this much compared to these other countries? It's a bit maddening.
RFK made a similar point, I think it was on CNBC or somewhere, talking to a reporter yesterday that you just made, which is these drugs can't be the panacea. You've got to do something about the lifestyle aspect of this.
Right.
Whoopi Goldberg did not appreciate. Here's what RFK said. He sounded a lot like you. Here he was on CNBC.
How do you feel about GOP-1 drugs? Do you think that they are a net positive?
I think that the best thing is the first line of response should be lifestyle. It should be eating well, making sure that you don't get obese, and that those GLP drugs have a place.
He said they have a place. The View didn't appreciate what he said. Here's what Whoopi Goldberg said in response.
This isn't just about food.
No, it's not.
This is sometimes people are born genetically larger.
Agreed. I didn't mean to.
No, I know you didn't. But I want to say this to
RFK.
That's his name. Because you're setting folks up for shame.
Yeah.
That's what you're trying. Maybe you don't know you're doing. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say you don't know, you don't realize what you do to people when you say stuff like that, because it doesn't work for everybody. And I'm going to show you, sir, because I weighed close to 300 less than 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And without the Mounjaro, this would not have happened.
There you go. Take it off.
And she showcases her newly svelte figure. Respond to Whoopi Goldberg there. What do you make of her comments?
Crazy. Because when you talk like that, Frank, you basically take personal responsibility and flush it down the toilet. I'm fat, I'm obese, it's my genes. I was born this way. Give me the drug. I'm sorry. In the time span of, let's just say, a generation, genetically, we as humans have not morphed and developed a whole bunch of genetic changes due to some stress in the environment that has now caused all these people to become obese. If you said over hundreds or thousands of years we genetically changed, sure, I could buy that. But in 20, 30 years, this is lifestyle. The amount of fast food, drive-through, convenience food. Look, one of the first things that I do when I ask my patients, and you got to realize, for those listening, I'm a New York guy. I grew up in an Italian family like you, Frank. We cooked and we ate together. We never went out to eat. But now I ask my patients, one of the first questions I ask is, how skilled are you in the kitchen? Do you know how to shop? Do you know how to prep food? And the answer almost categorically is no. They have one or two little meals that they can make, but the depth of their ability to eat and understand food and put a meal plan together is gone. And I feel like that is my mission, to make America eat again, eat good food again. And so, yeah, we could have drugs all day long, side effects, etc. But like I said, once those drugs are no longer available, they gain weight again because they don't have the skill set to not only cook the food, but to realize, hey, if I go to Wendy's 5 days a week for lunch with the guys, I'm going to get fat. I'm going to develop diabetes and heart disease and croak of a heart attack at 50. So it's all Frank, it's all screwed up, and we have to get this under control. It's really sad, but it's personal responsibility. If any excuse, it's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault. That's a bad way to go.
Yeah,
that's my take.
I would agree. Dr. Galati, it is always a treat to talk with you. I want to encourage folks to check out your website and maybe some of your books. They can go to drjoegalati.com. Have a great Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Frank, God bless you, and thanks to having me on. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. All right. If you want to comment, I'm sorry we didn't get to take your calls while Joe was on, but I had so many questions of my own. If you have questions, if you have comments, you could feel free to offer them. 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. This is... I'm sorry. A friend of mine, I don't know if he wants his name to mention because he's a very prominent public person. I actually just saw him on television. He said lack of Halterman's probably helped Whoopi Goldberg also. That's the bakery that she said was denying her service. That is a good one. Gee. 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.